Hello everybody, welcome to What Culture Comics. I'm Scott, joined by Zoe.
Still Zoe.
I know, I've came in because Mr. Ewan is ill, everybody's ill, it's near Christmas. And so, rather than sort of dwell on the absolute carnage, we're going to focus on the absolute carnage instead. Now apparently there's something dwelling as to a whole new supervillain that you're going to tell us about.
Well, I'm very excited for this because obviously, Scott, you are, although people don't know it, secretly my brother in that you like the Punisher.
Yes.
I've been getting you into the darker Batmans.
Yep.
You've been reading some Dark Knight Metal.
Yep.
But the one thing I haven't been able to convince you on is Absolute Carnage.
Okay, no, I will jump in. This isn't the news, but I do have a comic that is Venom, Carnage, and Toxin. So I'm laying it down. Zoe keeps doubting my comic knowledge. I can drop it in. I've got Punisher Max and I've got this Toxin thing.
We're getting
and
there.
a Blade Punisher crossover. But that's not what this is.
I think if any news was to convince you that you should be reading Absolute Carnage, it is this.
Okay.
Because as you may know, Absolute Carnage has been about Carnage.
Yes.
And we've been seeing him fight essentially all the other symbiotes, doing a pretty good job. But the one symbiote we never thought he'd properly be able to defeat is in fact Venom.
Big bad Venom.
Yeah. And with the last issue of Absolute Carnage having Venom join with the Hulk, it was like, well, there's no way. Venom and Hulk.
It cannot be done.
It's simply impossible.
I know this is comics, but come on.
But comics have proved to be comics.
Yes.
And we've seen him take the Venom symbiote.
Okay.
Which means Carnage has the Grendel symbiote,
Okay.
which has destroyed entire civilizations, and the Venom symbiote.
Right.
Which also means that pretty much anyone he takes on now, he'll just be able to defeat.
Okay.
Meaning that he might be able to awake Null, who is a dark god and a big deal.
That's a Metal Gear Solid character. But carry on.
But also
Yeah.
a big deal in comics, meaning that we may have the single most impressive villain of the decade.
Because, so for my sort of like orbiting comic, I love some comics, but I'm always on the fringe of stuff.
Yeah.
My sort of like, I don't know, satellite knowledge of comics, the go-to big bads or whatever used to be Doctor Doom and like Galactus and stuff. Is that just long past now?
So they're still a big deal, but I think it's interesting that as Marvel goes on, we're looking at like different kinds of villains, because there's only so many times you can be like, and then Galactus shows
Well,
up.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
I guess they're trying to
before.
find like a new way to do it.
So it's interesting because I'm sure you're aware of how powerful all the symbiotes are. I think
Well,
anyone who saw Venom.
I've not, this is the thing, I don't know how much to cater to the people who won't know all the newer stuff with the symbiotes, about the home planet and all the different, there's like a whole kingdom going on.
There's
like,
a lot.
There's a lot going on, but yeah, they've sort of like tried to delve into like, hey, there's way more to the symbiotes than you think, and it's not just something, because someone like me who watched the Venom movie was like, oh man, he's referring to like a hometown and like, like, oh, I was like a little loser back on my home planet, and that's been going on in the comics for a while, so I guess they've been building up to something like this for a while.
Essentially, like we've been fed tidbits about symbiotes for a long time, and Null had always been a big deal, but we'd never properly gotten to see him,
Right.
or at least we'd never gotten to see the idea that he might be the legitimate end game villain for Absolute Carnage, which would be insane. Simply because this sort of like legit world-ending possibility, like you say, it's usually Galactus or it's Doctor Doom, it's some kind of dude where you're like, oh, there he is, I know him. Whereas I'm really excited for this because I think a lot of people don't know about Null, they don't know about the symbiotes.
Right.
So to see this new big bad who looks legitimately terrifying.
So give me a little crash course on this Null thing. What's this Null business?
Well, it's Null, firstly.
Oh, Null. I thought there was like a new Parasite thing called Null, and I was like, that's cool
no.
because it could be gnarly, but it's not. That's not at all what it is.
Tubular.
Slightly less cool now.
So basically, he's the
Cowabunga.
god of symbiotes. He's the one who actually created all the symbiotes, which means he needs all the little bits of the symbiotes back
Right,
to
okay.
become whole again. It's sort of like Pokemon, only instead you awaken a Dark
Interstellar,
Lord.
evil, oily Pokemon.
But he's pretty much the god of them, which, I mean, as I'm sure you can understand, means that he should be insanely more powerful than
Yes.
any of them.
I've read Secret Wars. I know how power goes to their
I
heads.
know the thing.
It
I've
happens
seen
all the time.
things. So it's not only incredibly exciting, but it should pave a really interesting pathway for symbiotes to not only be a little bit less complex, but also to have this like consistent overarching evil where
Right.
it's like, will Null be coming back?
Do you think any part of this whole sort of shift towards it is like, I mean, obviously Sony benefit from it because they're doing the Venom movies and stuff. Do you think there's any sort of conversations between those two entities in terms of like, hey, could you make symbiotes a bit more important because God knows it's all we've got? Like
Well, I think
maybe.
it's obviously because Venom 2 should have Carnage as its villain. I think it's particularly interesting to think that with such an impressive villain for this
Yeah.
comic, any sort of follow-up, if they really wanted to go hardcore, you'd have to bring in. You'd have to bring him in, even just a little mention of like, oh, you know that dark god who rules over all of us.
There's also like the knock-on effect, like I said, of like Venom being kind of viewed as more. Venom's always been like lovable, whereas like Cletus Cassidy and Carnage have always just been like the insane side of it. Just like it's pure Carnage. It's meant to be like pure nihilism and whatever. And I always thought that Carnage was a bigger threat because of that. I wonder if they're pivoting in that way because Venom is kind of like an anti-hero, kind of always has been.
Yeah, so it's interesting because right now Eddie Brock has actually also kind of become Venom again.
Okay.
The short of it is he got a bunch more of the little symbiote codexes.
Right.
Which means he has the power not only of Venom but kind of the Avengers.
Okay.
So 5 should have this huge fight. Although it's kind of written in the cards that Nolan's going to show up.
Right.
So I also don't know if that means he's going to win. But there's going to be a huge fight. There's going to be a huge boss. It's going to be the best.
I'm a big fan. I got Zoe into Metal Gear Solid, so now you're a big fan of the big bad bosses, which means that this could only go well for you as a Carnage fan.
We're in the era of big bad bosses. I've never been so excited.
It's true. In terms of how symbiotes get defeated, is it the same thing with just noise, or like does that modulate in terms of the
interesting
power?
thing is that some sort of have these weaknesses and some don't. So Noel doesn't appear to have these weaknesses. And it's interesting because obviously since we haven't had these big fights with him, we don't actually know. Like Carnage, for anyone who's not been keeping up, sometimes doesn't have a weakness to fire, sometimes doesn't quite have the same weakness to noise.
Right. Because if they're making him like this big bad for Marvel, they want to, or like in certain arcs or whatever, then like they're gonna need to have him not be defeated by fire or sound.
So
He's gonna have to be
lights a match.
Yeah, just like oh, he runs away. I mean, I think because that's the thing. If you think of like the big totemic sort of villains, like I said, the Galactuses, the Doctor Dooms, the Doc Ocks or whatever, like they're not defeated by something so simple and pedestrian. But then again, maybe that could be his Achilles heel.
Yeah, well, I think it should be interesting because they could still have fire and they could still have noise, but it'd have to be huge.
Yes.
So like, I'd be okay with it as long as it's like the biggest fire we've ever seen in comics.
Like me reacting to L.A. Noire again, just the loudest possible thing in the world. But yeah, so this is it in terms of like this is all the knowledge that we have at the minute, and we're gonna go forward and see what happens.
So obviously the tie-ins have been focusing not on Null but more on the people around it. But I do anticipate that we will at some point get a bigger explanation for Null. I imagine it's going to be in one of the spin-offs, so to speak. So people following the main series may not get that sort of inoculation, if you will, to it, but at the same time it's very, very exciting because I'm just ready for this new ground.
Right.
As much as I enjoy my Galactus, I enjoy my big world eatings, enjoy Dark Side and Thanos kind of levels of villains.
Yes.
It'd be nice for something else. I think Marvel have often stood away from sort of the demon stuff because it's very much something travelled in DC. And I think to see it sort of come into full force as well with the symbiotes, which are occasionally overlooked for Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, like for me, like the whole symbiote thing was just like you never really thought about it in terms of it being like a planet of them or whatever. I know that's been going for a few years now, or like a long time, but like I never really thought of it in terms of there's more to them, there's more to their motivations, there's more to why they would want to come to Earth or do different things or whatever. I guess like because have you been reading Venom and stuff for a while? Like have they tried anything like this before?
I'm a big old dog.
Right, good.
I'm a big old dog.
So like because is this the first time they've done something like this where they've really put the focus on them?
So it's interesting because usually these stories tend to focus in just the Venom comics, which is a lot of fun if you're reading Venom and you like Venom, but it also means there you go. It also means a lot of Marvel fans I think sort of often miss out on this sort of stuff because like you don't want to read about a planet of aliens all the time. I don't want to do Planet of the Apes.
You can watch them every day, but you don't want to read about them every day.
Well, I mean, I can't blame anyone for that. So I think it's worth having sort of one of these main storylines that shows sort of some complicated concepts, but in a way you don't have to be like, I know every single part of the lore of the Clintar race of symbiotes.
That's what they were called. I couldn't think what they were called, and I knew it would begin with a K. I know it's so close. I was so close to the thing. I've read little bits of this stuff. It seems like it's this like it's this recommendable thing that everyone like. If you have a friend who's into comics, they've talked about this stuff and they've recommended it. Obviously, Zoe and you have to me. I haven't read it yet because I'm too busy getting excited for Death Stranding. But there's a lot of different things that they seem to have gone back to the well and gone. Well, actually, we can extrapolate this out, and this seems like the zenith of that in terms of making Carnage himself like a massive antagonistic force going forward.
I think you're exactly right with that because obviously one of the main things I'm excited for with Absolute Carnage is that it's not too lore heavy in the sense that if you read it and you're like, wow, I'm interested in these aliens, where do they come from? What's going on? Why are they affected by noise? You can research it, but also if you just want to see a super spooky dude fight other spooky dudes, as is the season, you can absolutely do that. And I think it's very exciting because it means I can say, hey Scott, I know you haven't learnt about all the weird names of all of these.
What are they called? The Clintar?
Clintar, they all have weird kind of goth names.
Oh, good.
I'm about it.
Uh-huh.
But it's nice because you can recommend it to people who don't necessarily have to get fully into the lore.
Would you say Absolute Carnage is a good starting point for that?
I don't know if it's a good starting point, but in terms of, because let's be honest, when you're into comics, you don't want to be like, oh, I just want to read a boring comic where he fights a really, really basic villain. I want to see if he can take down people who are doing tax evasion. You want to see a big fight. And
That's what I want.
I think in terms of like a starting game big fight, it's probably the best you could do. I'm a huge fan and a huge nerd.
Good.
So.
That's all very good. I think the way that they seem to be positioning it gets me excited as someone who always liked Cletus Cassidy as an entity and always loved the symbiotes. And I like all that stuff. So it's like, this seems pretty promising, especially for what they can do with the character going forward.
This is why I'm hoping it's sort of your gateway in.
It might be. This and blooming like the black metal Batman and everything. I'm pretty game. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below of the idea of, I don't know, Carnage being this massive interstellar force for evil. But for now, I've been Scott from What Culture Comics.
And I've been Zoe from What Culture Comics.
I'll catch you next time. Bye.